Good morning. This week I'm doing my Parsha video from the University of Cape Town shortly before I'm going to give a lecture. So, please excuse any problems in the videos. I am outside in the wind, so it might shake the screen a little bit and also make a little bit of noise. We have in Parashat Shoftim a very enigmatic verse that I would like to spend a bit of time decoding with you. The Torah speaks about somebody going to worship idols, transgressing Hashem's covenant with the Jewish people. The essential covenant, the Jewish people, is that Hashem will be our God, that we will be His nation. That's the deal. And so somebody who goes out to worship idols is breaking that covenant, that bond, in a very fundamental way, analogous, let's say, to the bond of marriage. And then what the Torah tells us is, Vayelech ve'avod elohim acherim, he will go off and serve other gods, the gods of others, v'yishtachu lahem, and bow down to them, v'lashemesh or liyareach, or the sun or the moon, or l'chol tzva hashamayim asher lo tziviti, or the entire legion of heaven, all of the heavenly bodies, which I have not commanded. Now there are two or maybe three things identified in this verse. The sun and the moon. There's the Elohim Acherim, these foreign gods. Okay, we won't go into that today. That's pretty straightforward. That's, all of the pagan idols of the time. Then, the sun and the moon. Okay, we also understand that. Then the third one is all the heavenly hosts. And Hashem concludes, and this is the problem, Asher lo tziviti, which I did not command. Well, what does that mean, that Hashem did not command? So Rashi says, and many of the commentaries explain over here, Asher lo tziviti le'avdam, which I did not command you to worship them. This person will go off and worship these idols, which I did not command you to worship them, and therefore there will be serious consequences, and there will be a court case and witnesses and the whole thing. But Rabbi Moshe Feinstein and others point out, the problem is not that Hashem did not command them. The problem is not that Hashem didn't say go and worship idols. The problem is that many, many times Hashem has said to us, do not go and worship idols. If you want to define everything that Hashem has not commanded as problematic, well, Hashem never commanded us to eat dessert. Right? The possible exception of Pesach, the Afikoman. Right? But every other time, there's no command to eat dessert. On Shabbat, you can make an argument that it's Oneg Shabbat, but during the week, so should there be a court case then also? The fact that you were not commanded something surely does not immediately make it wrong. And so for Rashi to say it's wrong because I didn't command it doesn't fully deal with the implications of this pasuk. So there are a number of commentaries who take it a level deeper. And for example, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says, really, Asher lo tziviti is not referring to the person. We're not saying that the person will go and worship, but I didn't command the person to worship. It's a reference to the sun, moon, and stars, or the heavenly bodies, that I did not command these heavenly bodies. What does that mean? So what he says is, the drawing back on what the Rambam says in the laws of idol worship. The Rambam tells us that the reason, the way in which idol worship came to the world, if you think about it, the world started off, you have Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, this knowledge of Hashem, this intimacy with Hashem, and then a few generations later, people are worshipping idols. Where does that come from? So where it comes from, he says, is that people started worshipping God, and then they said, well, God has provided us with the sun and the moon. And the sun and the moon provide very important services in the world. The sun with its providing heat and light and essentially life to the entire world. The moon stabilizing the tides, right? There's really good things that the sun and the moon do. And they said, we've got to be grateful for that. And they said that sun and the moon are independent, and Hashem has given them an independence, but He's asked them to perform this job. And so we should really say thank you to the sun and the moon as servants of Hashem. And then later on, they forgot that they were servants of Hashem, and they just started saying thank you to the sun and the moon. And there you go, the game was on, they were worshipping the sun. So he says that you must be careful not to worship the sun and the moon. Why? And he says these last three words are, so to speak, in the mouth of the idol worshipper. Asher lo tziveti, which I never commanded. Mustn't worship the sun and the moon, which God never commanded. Why? Why would you worship the sun and the moon? You'd worship the sun and the moon because they have independence. if these are things which God has commanded, if they are emissaries of God, if that's their role, is just carrying out their role of doing what Hashem has instructed them to do, well then, why would you worship them? If they have a level of independence, if I have not commanded them, if they're doing it of their own free will, then it's something that you could worship. And so that's how Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch reads the sentence. That somebody will go off and worship these other powers, the sun and the moon and stars, all of the heavenly bodies. Why? Thinking that they are not totally under my control. That's incorrect. Whatever you have in the world is all coming from Hashem. And so any time you get caught up in worshipping anything other than Hashem, even if it's a real power, you're missing the point. It's like saying, who's your favorite author? A big pen. Why? Well, the big pen wrote the book. No, the big pen didn't write the book. The author wrote the book. The author just used a big pen. Right? Who's your favorite author? Microsoft Word. That's ridiculous. That's just the program. Somebody who says that is totally missing it. And so that's what he says as well. Somebody who thinks thinks that the sun, moon, and stars have some kind of independence, that's where the problem comes from. Rabbi Yaakov Mecklenburg, the Ktavya Kabbalah, says something else, and he in fact splits up these groups into three, as I've mentioned. He goes and worships idols, understood. He goes and worships the sun and the moon, that would be very bad. But then he says there's a break in the pasuk, and that break in the pasuk says that the heavenly bodies which I have not commanded are a third group. The way you read the pasuk is like this: Vayelech v'avod Elohim acherim v'ishtachu lahem v'lashemesh o le'areach, the sun or the moon, or l'chol tzva hashamayim asher lo tziveti, or all of the heavenly bodies which I have not commanded. So you have the sun and the moon, or the heavenly bodies which I have not commanded. There's a break over there. So he says, the sun and the moon, I understand why somebody would worship them, because they have all of this power. But he says there's another way of looking at it as well. On the other hand, you could say the sun and the moon should dafka not be worshipped. Why? Because they are here to serve human beings. The sun and the moon are here to give us life, to provide for us, to synchronize our world. So why would you worship your servant? Why would you worship something that's created to serve you? Maybe what we should worship is some of the stars in the heavens which do not impact human beings, which do not have a purpose in creation other than being great things. And that, he says, is the third category. So maybe you'll go and worship gods of others. Maybe you go and worship the sun and the moon. Or anything else in the heaven which I have not given it a purpose, which I have not commanded to serve you. Maybe that we should worship, that you also should not worship. So here we have some analysis of this verse, the seemingly strange line at the end. Somebody will go up and worship these things which I have not commanded. Either I haven't commanded them to worship, right, or I have which they think I have not commanded them to serve a role in the world, or things which actually I haven't commanded to serve a role in the world, and therefore you may think that it's fitting for worship. But at the end of the day, that's not true. We don't worship the pen, we don't worship the word processor. We understand that the source of all goodness and power and beauty and majesty comes from Hashem, and that's where we have the privilege of connecting to Hashem every single day. Have a wonderful Shabbos.